I'm here, I'm in one piece, I'm alive, and hopefully you're ready to share something that God can do something with. So I want to talk this morning about righteousness by faith, or justification by faith. Yikes. When I hear that, that sounds like a lot of words. I remember the first thing that went through my head, I was like, nope, like that sounds like something that's really like doctrinal, something I'm gonna have to like think about a lot. I don't know if I'm down, right? But I started to study it, and as I started to study it, I began to uncover this message that is so beautifully simple. So I want to take you through it and expose you to the journey that I've been through. So I started out like super basic. I'm gonna break this down like you're gonna look at me like she's dumb or something, but I kid you not, this is the process I had to go through. I went through and I looked up each word, so in the dictionary. So righteousness in the dictionary is to be free from guilt and sin, right? To be free from guilt and sin. By, in the dictionary, means through means of or through agent, the agent of. And then faith is firm belief in something for which there is no proof. Firm belief in something for which there is no proof. And when I string those together, then it reads, to be free from guilt and sin through the means of a firm belief in something for which there is no proof. Maybe that made it worse. Maybe that made it more complicated. So I'm going to read it again. To be free from guilt and sin through means of a firm belief in something for which there is no proof. Now for me, faith is a word that I struggle with. That's the one that I get hung up on. Because how can you have a firm belief in something for which there is no proof? I know a lot of you were at the Gungor and the Brilliance concert last night. For those of you that weren't, David Gungor made a comment and he said, the enemy of faith is certainty. Faith needs doubt. And I found this to be so profound because we live in a world that wants to know things for sure. We want things to be proven. And I can find myself chasing down answers to questions for God because I want them to be proven beyond a shadow of a doubt. I want my faith to be justified. And the questions, let me clear this, the questions are not bad, but I'm often asking in the wrong places. God seeks relationship. I'm going to say that again. God seeks relationship. Say it with me. God seeks relationship. And in a relationship, if I have a question for that person, I'm going to go to them, right? I'm not going to ask someone else. That makes the most sense. They're probably going to be the one that has the best answer for me. Now, I'd say I'd be much more hesitant to do this if it was someone that I didn't really know. So then it begs the question, are we in relationship? Any relationship has to start out with an element of faith. I'm in Inspiration Revelation with DT this quarter, and he has made this very clear that there has to be that step of faith. And then as you walk with that person and as you get to know them, your trust builds as you get to know them better and better. You reach a comfort level where you're finally able to be real and to ask the questions. And we do this all the time with each other, right? Friendships, romantic relationships. And yet, it somehow seems so much more difficult with God. And I wrestled with this. I didn't know why it was, but I'm realizing, and I would like to argue, that it's not any more difficult, but somehow along the way we've complicated it. I think there's a beautiful picture in Mark 5:25 through 34. I'm going to read it. And a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. She had suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors. How would you like to hear that if you were a doctor? That your patient was suffering a great deal under your care, that kind of sucks. And had spent all that she had, and yet instead of getting better, she was getting worse. And when she heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak. Because she thought, if I just touch his clothes, I will be healed. Immediately, her bleeding stopped, and she felt in her body that she was free from her suffering. At once, Jesus realized that the power had gone out from him. And I always find it so fascinating that it says this. It's almost like Jesus' power is like the battery thing on your phone, you know, like suddenly you're at like 90% instead of 100%. And he turns around the crowd and he says, "Who touched my clothes?" And his disciples are like, you see the people crowding against you. Like, how can you ask, who touched me? But Jesus keeps looking around to see who had done it. Then the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell at his feet, trembling with fear, and told him the whole truth. And he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be free from your suffering." We can all agree, right? This woman was in like a less than ideal situation. Constant bleeding would have meant that she was always unclean. She would have always had to live apart from society. So this disease would have come with like severe social consequences that I'm sure would have taken a toll on her emotional and mental state. Imagine the guilt and shame that she must have lived with for 12 years. And yet one day, somehow, by some means, she hears about this man named Jesus. And something stirs in her heart, and she begins to develop a faith that is so strong that she decides to quite literally, risk it all. I can almost see her weaving through the crowd, trying to shield her face, hoping that no one recognizes her, because if they do, they'll identify her as the bleeding woman. I doubt that the crowd just magically parted to make room for her. So can you imagine her pushing her way through the crowd, thinking all the while, if they only knew who I was, if they only knew how unclean I am. This is like social and religious suicide for her. But by some miracle, she makes it to Jesus, and she touches the edge of his cloak, and immediately she's healed. It says immediately her bleeding stopped, and she felt in her body that she was free from suffering. And Jesus knows that something has happened because her touch is different from the rest of the crowd. Power has left him. And despite the ignorant comments of his disciples, he keeps looking. At this point, she's been healed. She has the perfect opportunity to just dip at this point, right? She doesn't need to stick around for anything else. But something prompts her. Something prompts her to come clean. And she admits to what had happened. I can't imagine that this was easy to do in front of all these people. It says that she's trembling in fear before God, knowing that suddenly the people around her are going to recognize her as the bleeding woman, and they'll look at her differently. She has a lot to risk. And at this point, she doesn't know what Jesus is going to do. And Jesus does the unexpected. He looks at her, admiring her honesty and her bravery. And he says, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be free from your suffering." I love how Jesus honors her in this moment. He knows everything that she's experienced. And he recognizes that the best thing to do in that moment is remind her after years of rejection that she belongs to someone. She's his daughter. It's such an intimate term that Jesus chooses to use in this moment. And he honors her faith. And she is made righteous before him. I want to go back to that definition we established of righteousness by faith. To be free from guilt and sin through means of a firm belief in something for which there is no proof. There was no way, I'm sure, when she was leaving her house that she could prove that Jesus was going to heal her, right? But she claimed it in faith, and God honored that faith. And she was freed from guilt and sin, and she was made righteous through her faith. And Jesus says, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be free from your suffering." It's as simple as that. But too often, we complicate faith. Why is it so easy to begin a relationship with friends around campus and so much more difficult to start one with God? I'd like to propose, I could be wrong, but I'd like to propose that it's because we're suspicious of God. Suspicious of his character. Suspicious of the gift. If you're like me, you've heard talk before about how we need to give everything to God and trust him with everything in our life. Let's be real. That's hard, right? I was having a really honest, real conversation with God the other day, and I was like, I know you want me to give you everything, but I don't know if I can do that. And it was like God said to me, nobody ever gives everything to me all the time. Don't worry. I know you're human. I know you're going to mess up. But it's okay because I already died for that. So just keep walking with me, and we'll work it all out together in its time. Now for me, this is liberating. I'm finding that I don't realize how often I approach God thinking that I need to clean up my act beforehand. Or I have something in my life that I don't think that God's going to like, but I'm not ready to give it up yet, so I just don't talk to him about it. But God is teaching me that he longs for relationship. God seeks relationship. Say it with me again. God seeks relationship. And in a relationship, you share everything with that person. Starting to walk regularly with God doesn't mean I'm going to have to give up that thing in my life that week, right? It might be 5 years from now. It could be 10 years from now. It could be 20 years from now. But it's all going to be in God's perfect timing. And he'll take care of it when it's time. And as we walk with him, our trust builds. And as we trust him more and more, we are more and more willing to give him things in our life. God seeks relationship. So much so that he met us here on earth. When I think about what he did, it seems ridiculous that there's anything in my life that I wouldn't be able to take to him. In my lowest moments, I often think about what I'm feeling, and we've all experienced it. There are moments in our life where you're at a point so low where you're like, I don't know how I'm going to get out of here. And you think about all those feelings, and for me, this picture comes in my mind. I see Jesus with the cross on his back, with thorns cutting into his head, and blood running down his face. And he looks into my eyes, and in a moment, he understands everything that I'm feeling because he sees the bottom of my soul. He understands. And then he says, here, let me. And he takes it from me. And I see the weight of my sin multiplied by the billions of people that have ever existed on this planet. And it's crushing. And he takes it and he walks step by step up to Calvary. And there he hangs with the weight of the world on his chest. And that's where my shame and his grace collide. And as he said, it is finished, shutters run out from underneath the cross and rocks split in two. And that curtain rips from top to bottom, giving me direct access to God. And after waging war in the grave, after 3 days, he rises, signifying that his grace won over my shame. Undeserving, loving grace. Christ did everything that he could so that it would be so simple for us. All I have to do is profess belief in him, and he takes me where I'm at in whatever mess I'm in, and he begins to work and mold me into a new creation. In his time and as he sees fit. And we walk and we grow together in our relationship. It's really that simple. And I just want to say that God is so cool because he gets it. There are moments in my life where I'm like, okay, God, I have faith in you. Okay, I sit back and I'm like, I actually don't. I actually have a lot of doubts. There's a lot of stuff right now that I don't know if you're going to come through for me. Like, I really want to. I want to have faith, but I don't really feel like deep down in my heart there's a piece of me that's like clinging to something. But God, will you take my willingness? And he does. Every time. He takes my willingness and he begins to work on it and mold it until it becomes real, genuine trust, real, genuine faith in him. I came across this poem years ago, and it has meant so much to me. It was actually, I was telling my mom about it this morning. It was a poem that I read in my very first sermon. And so it's close to my heart, and I want to read it for you now, as I think it beautifully describes the process of faith. When I first met Christ, it seemed as though life was rather like a bike ride, but it was a tandem bike. And I noticed that Christ was in the back, helping me pedal. I don't know just when it was that he suggested we change places, but life has not been the same since. When I had control, I knew the way. It was rather boring, but predictable. It was the shortest distance between 2 points. But when he took the lead, he knew delightful long cuts up mountains and through rocky places. at breakneck speeds, and it was all I could do to hang on. Even though it looks like madness, he said, "Pedal." I worried and was anxious and asked, "Where are you taking me?" He laughed and didn't answer. And I started to learn to trust. I forgot my boring life and I entered into the adventure. And when I'd say I'm scared, he leaned back and touched my hand. He took me to people with gifts that I needed. Gifts of healing, acceptance, and joy. And he said, "Give the gifts away. They're extra baggage, too much weight." So I did. I gave them to the people we met, and I found that in giving, I received. And still, our burden was light. I did not trust him at first to be in control of my life. I thought he'd wreck it. But he knows bike secrets. He knows how to make it bend to take sharp corners, knows how to jump to clear high rocks, and knows how to fly to short and scary passages. And I'm learning to shut up and pedal in the strangest places. And I'm beginning to enjoy the view and the cool breeze on my face with my delightful constant companion, Jesus Christ. And when I'm sure I just can't do any more, he just smiles and says, "Pedal." Righteousness by faith, fully understood, is liberating. We don't have to work or earn our righteousness, our freedom from guilt and from sin. All we have to do is believe. Just let him get on the bike. And this belief, it doesn't have to be bulletproof. In fact, expect it to be shaky. But it's okay because he knows that we're human. There's a reason why Hebrews 12:2 says, "Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith," as in the first and only one who will ever get it right. Right? But the fact is, he got it right for me. He knows and he understands everything about us, and he seeks relationship. God seeks relationship. Thank you. As Hebrews 10:22-23 says, "Let us draw near to God with a sincere heart and with the full assurance that faith brings, having our hearts sprinkled to cleanse us from a guilty conscience, and having our bodies washed with pure water, let us hold unswervingly to the hope we profess, for he who promised is faithful." I challenge you, try faith. God desires relationships so strongly that he's done everything he can to make it as simple as it can be for us. Expect there to be doubt. It wouldn't be faith without it. Forgive yourself in moments when you lack trust. You're only human. And he already died for it. And thank your lucky stars that we serve a God who is faithful, even when we are faithless.